October 2019. The air hung heavy in the abandoned Ironwood coal mine, 30 miles outside of Ashton County, Ohio. Sheriff Deputy Brian Miller's flashlight beam cut through decades of darkness, illuminating what no one was meant to find. "Control, I need backup at the old Ironwood site, and send the coroner." His voice echoed against the damp stone walls. What began as a routine patrol following reports of teenage trespassers had just become something else entirely, something that would finally answer questions that had haunted Ashton County for 45 years. Two sets of remains, hidden deep within a sealed-off section of the mine, and nearby, a distinctive silver locket with the initials S.O. The same locket Samantha Soto was wearing the night she vanished alongside her identical twin sister Olivia in 1974. For nearly half a century, the disappearance of the Soto twins had been nothing but questions without answers. Two vibrant young women who simply vanished one autumn evening after finishing their shifts at Miller's Diner. Two empty chairs at every family holiday. Two bedroom doors their mother could never bring herself to close. Until now. Before we continue this shocking story, take a second to hit subscribe and like this video. Your support helps bring these forgotten stories to light, and the algorithm gods will make sure you don't miss any future uploads. The discovery at Ironwood Mine wasn't just the end of a missing persons case. It was the first domino in a sequence that would expose decades of secrets buried in this small Ohio community. Because when authorities finally identified a suspect and made an arrest in 2019, it wasn't a drifter or an unknown predator. It was someone the community knew, someone they trusted, someone who had walked among them for 45 years carrying this terrible secret. The Soto case represents more than just a solved mystery. It stands as a testament to the persistence of a family who never stopped searching, detectives who refused to let the case file gather dust, and advances in forensic science that finally gave voice to victims long silenced. This is also a story about a divided community. When the twins first disappeared in 1974, suspicion tore through Ashton County like wildfire. Neighbors accused neighbors, families stopped speaking. The search for the Soto sisters revealed the fault lines running beneath the surface of small-town America, lines that would crack wide open when the truth finally emerged 45 years later. What makes this case particularly haunting is how close the answer was all along. The key suspect had been interviewed in the original investigation, but managed to slip through. For decades, this person attended community vigils for the missing twins, looked their parents in the eye, and maintained a facade of innocence while harboring unimaginable secrets. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I'm always fascinated to see how far these stories travel and how they connect us across distances. Tonight, we'll walk through the events of October 1974, trace the decades-long search for answers, and reveal the stunning breakthrough that finally brought closure to one of Ohio's most baffling cold cases. This is a story of loss, persistence, deception, and ultimately justice delayed, but not denied. Ashton County, Ohio, in 1974, was a place where everyone knew everyone, or at least thought they did. With just over 25,000 residents scattered across rolling farmland and small townships, it was a community where doors remained unlocked and children played outside until the streetlights flickered on. The county seat of Crestwood, with its modest downtown square, served as the beating heart of local commerce and gossip. The early 1970s had brought changes to this corner of Ohio. The Vietnam War had claimed the lives of 17 Ashton County boys and returned dozens more forever changed. Economic anxiety loomed as manufacturing jobs began their slow migration elsewhere, though the local coal industry still provided steady, if dangerous, work. Miller's Diner sat at the intersection of Main and Oak Streets in Crestwood, its neon sign casting a warm glow over the sidewalk each evening. The diner served as a community hub, where farmers discussed crop prices over morning coffee, high school students crowded into booths after football games, and third-shift workers grabbed late-night meals before heading to the mines or the local factory. It was at Miller's that Samantha and Olivia Soto had found work shortly after graduating from Ashton County High School in 1972. The identical twins were impossible to miss in a town where Hispanic families were few and far between. Javier Soto had moved his family from Texas to Ohio in 1965 when the twins were 13, taking a foreman position at the Ironwood coal mine that offered better pay and benefits than he could find back home. The Soto twins shared more than just their striking appearance. Both stood 5'4" with glossy black hair that fell past their shoulders, warm brown eyes, and smiles that customers at Miller's described as lighting up the whole place. But those who knew them well could spot the differences. Samantha, older by 7 minutes, wore her hair parted on the left and spoke with quiet confidence. She dreamed of becoming a nurse and had been saving for nursing school. Olivia lived to friends and family, parted her hair on the right, and possessed a more outgoing personality. She loved music, played guitar at local church gatherings, and talked about moving to Nashville someday. Those girls were inseparable, recalled Sharon Davis, who managed Miller's Diner in 1974. They worked the same shifts, shared a car, even dressed alike some days. But they had their own minds about things. Samantha was the planner, always thinking 3 steps ahead. Live more in the moment. October 17, 1974, began as an ordinary Thursday. The twins arrived for their afternoon shift at Miller's at 2 p.m., wearing matching blue uniforms with white aprons. The diner was busy that day. A regional sales meeting at the farm equipment dealer had brought in extra customers, and the high school had an early dismissal for teacher training. Security camera footage, grainy in black and white but preserved as evidence, shows the twins working their section, Samantha methodically filling salt shakers while Olivia chatted with regulars at the counter. At 8:07 p.m., they clocked out, collected their tips, and waved goodbye to the night manager. "See you tomorrow," Samantha called out, the last words anyone at Miller's would ever hear her speak. The twins' routine walk home took them down Main Street, past the courthouse square, and then 5 blocks east along Sycamore Street to the modest neighborhood where the Soto family lived. The route was well lit and familiar. They'd walked it hundreds of times before. On that particular evening, witnesses reported seeing the twins stop at Thompson's Pharmacy to purchase a birthday card for their mother, whose birthday was the following week. The clerk at Thompson's, Linda Price, was the last known person to see the Soto twins alive. "They seemed in good spirits," she told investigators. "Samantha asked if we had any cards with roses on them. Their mother loved roses. They left around 8:30, heading east on Sycamore." The distance from Thompson's Pharmacy to the Soto home was approximately 12 minutes on foot. When the twins hadn't arrived home by 9:15 p.m., their mother, Elena, began to worry. By 10 p.m., she had called Miller's Diner and learned her daughters had left hours earlier. By 11 p.m., Javier Soto was driving the streets of Crestwood, looking for any sign of his daughters. At midnight, the Soto family reported Samantha and Olivia missing to the Ashton County Sheriff's Department. "We didn't take it seriously at first," admitted former Deputy Sheriff Kevin Fisher in a 2020 interview. "2 adult women missing for a few hours? We thought they might have met up with friends or gone to a late movie. We told the family to wait until morning." But morning came with no sign of the twins. No calls, no messages. Their beds remained undisturbed. By noon on October 18th, the Soto family's concern had infected the community. Friends, neighbors, and co-workers gathered at the Soto home, offering support and organizing search parties. The sheriff's department, now recognizing the seriousness of the situation, began interviewing potential witnesses and tracing the twins' last known movements. The search expanded rapidly. Volunteers combed every inch of the route between Miller's Diner and the Soto home. They checked abandoned buildings, drainage ditches, and wooded areas on the outskirts of town. The local radio station interrupted regular programming with updates and appeals for information. "It was unlike anything I'd seen before," recalled Crestwood resident Carol Evans. "Everyone dropped what they were doing to help search. Men called in sick to work, women brought food to the volunteers, the high school football game was postponed. Finding those girls became the only thing that mattered." By the 3rd day, the FBI had joined the investigation. Agents interviewed the twins' friends, co-workers, and acquaintances.
They examined the sisters' bedroom, finding nothing out of place, their savings passbook still in their dresser drawers, their few pieces of jewelry untouched, except for the silver locket Samantha typically wore daily. The most puzzling aspect of the case was the complete absence of evidence. No signs of struggle were found along their walking route. No suspicious vehicles had been reported in the area. The twins had simply vanished into the autumn evening, leaving no trace behind. It was as if they'd been plucked from the earth, Javier Soto told reporters a week after the disappearance, his voice breaking. "My girls wouldn't run away. They wouldn't leave their mother. Something happened to them, and someone knows what it is." As days turned to weeks, the search continued, but hope diminished. Posters with the twins' photographs appeared in store windows throughout Ashton County and neighboring counties. Their smiling faces looked out from the front page of the Crestwood Chronicle newspaper for 7 consecutive days, a local record. The moment the Soto twins were reported missing marked the beginning of Ashton County's innocence lost. Doors that had never been locked were now secured with deadbolts. Children who had roamed freely were kept under watchful eyes. A community that had once prided itself on its safety now harbored an unseen threat, and the knowledge that 2 of their own had vanished without a trace. The Ashton County Sheriff's Department of 1974 was ill-equipped to handle a case of this magnitude. With a total force of just 11 deputies serving the entire county, their experience was largely limited to drunk driving arrests, domestic disputes, and occasional property crimes. Sheriff Frank Wallace, a 3-term incumbent, known more for his political connections than his investigative prowess, found himself thrust into a national spotlight as the Soto case captured media attention. "We're pursuing all available leads," became Wallace's stock phrase at daily press briefings, though former deputies would later admit the investigation lacked both direction and expertise in those crucial early days. The first 48 hours after the twins' disappearance yielded little physical evidence. Deputies canvassed the route between Miller's Diner and the Soto home, finding no more suspicious than a discarded hair ribbon near the corner of Sycamore and Elm Streets. The ribbon, blue with white polka dots, was initially thought to belong to one of the twins, but was later determined to have no connection to the case. Without a crime scene, investigators focused on establishing a timeline and identifying potential witnesses. This effort produced the case's first significant lead, a blue pickup truck seen idling near Thompson's Pharmacy around the time the twins would have been passing by. 3 separate witnesses mentioned the vehicle: an elderly man walking his dog, a teenage couple sitting on a nearby porch, and the night janitor at the First Baptist Church. All described a mid-1960s model Ford pickup truck with a dented right fender and a partial license plate containing the numbers 7 and 4. None could clearly identify the driver, though the teenage boy thought it might have been a man wearing a cap. This blue truck became the investigation's first focal point. A list was compiled of all blue Ford pickups registered in Ashton County and surrounding areas, 127 vehicles in total. Deputies began the painstaking process of locating each one, interviewing owners, and checking for signs of recent cleaning or damage repair. The truck's owner was identified on October 25th, 8 days after the disappearance. Robert Evans, a 42-year-old mechanic who worked at the Texaco station 2 blocks from Miller's Diner, admitted to being in the area that evening but denied any involvement with the twins' disappearance. "I was having engine trouble," he told investigators. "Stopped to let it cool, then headed straight home." His wife corroborated his story, claiming he arrived home by 9 p.m. With no evidence to contradict his account and no legal grounds for a search warrant, investigators were forced to accept Evans's explanation, though he remained on their informal suspect list. As the investigation continued, 3 additional persons of interest emerged. Carlos Vega, a 27-year-old distant cousin of the Soto family, who had visited from Texas 2 weeks before the disappearance. Vega had allegedly made romantic overtures toward Samantha, which she had rejected. He claimed to have returned to Austin 3 days before the twins vanished, a claim verified by his employer's time cards, though questions about the reliability of those records would surface years later. Arthur Sterling, the 56-year-old owner of Sterling Mining Company, which operated several coal mines in the area, including the one where Javier Soto worked. Anonymous tips suggested Sterling had been seen arguing with Javier Soto the week before the disappearance, allegedly over safety concerns Soto had raised. Sterling denied any connection to the case and pointed to his presence at a business dinner in Columbus the night of October 17th, an alibi confirmed by multiple witnesses.
Mark Jensen, a 31-year-old former boyfriend of Olivia Soto. Their relationship had ended 6 months earlier, purportedly on bad terms. Jensen had no alibi for the night in question, but cooperated fully with investigators, even volunteering for a polygraph test, which he passed. No evidence linked him to the disappearance. By early November, the investigation had stalled. The FBI, which had initially provided significant resources, began scaling back its involvement as more pressing cases demanded attention. Local law enforcement continued to follow up on tips and leads, but with diminishing returns. The lack of physical evidence hampered the investigation from the start. No crime scene meant no fingerprints, no fibers, no blood evidence, nothing that could point definitively to a suspect or even confirm a crime had occurred. The twins' bedroom revealed nothing unusual. Their personal belongings remained untouched. The only notable absence was Samantha's silver locket, which she had been wearing the night they disappeared. Witness testimonies, initially promising, began to contradict each other as memories faded or were influenced by media coverage. The teenage couple who had reported seeing the blue pickup later disagreed about its exact location. The pharmacy clerk, Linda Price, initially stated the twins left around 8:30 p.m., but later said it might have been closer to 8:15 p.m., a discrepancy that significantly impacted the timeline. Most problematic were the sightings that began to pour in from across the Midwest. The Soto twins were reportedly spotted at a gas station in Indiana, a bus terminal in Kentucky, a restaurant in Michigan. Each sighting diverted precious resources as investigators were obligated to follow up, only to find dead ends. "It's like chasing ghosts," one frustrated deputy told a reporter off the record. "Everyone wants to help, but half these sightings are just people's imaginations running wild." The case might have maintained momentum had it not been for the Clay County bank robbery on December 3, 1974, the largest heist in Ohio history at that time. With 3 people dead and over $200,000 missing, law enforcement resources throughout the region were redirected to the manhunt for the bank robbers. The Soto case, with its lack of concrete leads, was quietly deprioritized. By Christmas 1974, the daily briefings had stopped. The volunteer search parties had disbanded. The posters of the smiling twins began to yellow and curl at the edges. The case wasn't officially closed. It would remain active on the books for decades. But the intense investigative effort had wound down to occasional follow-ups on new tips, most of which led nowhere. Several factors contributed to the case going cold. The limited forensic capabilities of the era meant that potentially crucial evidence went uncollected or unanalyzed. The rural setting, with its vast areas of woodland and abandoned mining operations, made comprehensive searches nearly impossible. The lack of security cameras along the twins' route home, with the exception of the single camera at Miller's Diner, meant there was no visual record of their movements or potential abductors. Perhaps most significantly, the investigation suffered from tunnel vision. Focused on the blue pickup truck and the initial persons of interest, investigators may have overlooked other possibilities. Later reviews of the case files would reveal that several potentially relevant reports, including one about an unfamiliar station wagon seen near the Soto home that evening, were filed away without thorough follow-up. As 1974 gave way to 1975, the disappearance of Samantha and Olivia Soto transitioned from breaking news to unsolved mystery to local legend.
Parents used their story to warn children about walking alone after dark. Anniversary articles appeared in the local paper each October. The Soto family continued their private search, but the official investigation had effectively gone dormant. What time is it where you're watching? Let me know in the comments below. Day or night, someone, somewhere is still searching for answers in cases just like this one. In the Soto household, time stopped on October 17, 1974. The family calendar remained turned to that month for years, the days circled in red ink, a silent testament to the moment their world shattered. For Javier and Elena Soto and their two younger children, Mateo and Sofia, life became divided into two distinct periods, before the disappearance and after. Javier Soto had always been a man defined by quiet strength. Standing 5'8" with calloused hands and a weathered face that reflected years of outdoor work, he had built a reputation at Sterling Mining as a reliable foreman who put safety above production quotas. Born in El Paso to parents who had moved from Mexico in the 1930s, Javier had worked since age 14, eventually saving enough to move his growing family to Ohio for better opportunities. "My father was the kind of man who fixed things," Mateo Soto recalled in a 2020 interview. "If something broke, he'd repair it. If there was a problem, he'd solve it. When my sisters vanished, it was the first time I ever saw him face something he couldn't fix, and it nearly destroyed him." 3 weeks after Samantha and Olivia disappeared, Javier took an indefinite leave of absence from the mine. What began as a temporary break to assist with the search became a permanent departure from his career. Using the family's modest savings and selling their second car, Javier transformed the garage into a makeshift command center for his own investigation. Maps of Ashton County covered the walls, red pins marking every location searched, blue pins indicating reported sightings, yellow pins highlighting areas still to be explored. Filing cabinets held meticulously organized notes on every person interviewed, every lead followed, every dead end encountered. A dedicated phone line, the number distributed on homemade flyers throughout Ohio and neighboring states, rang directly to this garage headquarters. Javier's days followed a grueling routine. Mornings began at dawn with physical searches of areas overlooked by official efforts, abandoned buildings, remote creek beds, overgrown hunting trails. Afternoons were spent following up on tips, interviewing potential witnesses, and coordinating with the network of volunteers who continued to assist long after official search parties disbanded. Evenings were dedicated to updating his files and planning the next day's efforts. He slept maybe 4 hours a night. Sometimes I'd wake up at 2 a.m. and find him at the kitchen table studying maps or reading books about investigation techniques. He taught himself to think like a detective because he believed the police had given up. Jensen's dedication came at a steep cost. His health deteriorated as stress and exhaustion took their toll. By 1976, his hair had turned completely gray. By 1980, he developed a heart condition that doctors attributed directly to chronic stress. Yet he refused to slow down, driven by a father's unshakable determination to find his children. While Javier channeled his grief into relentless action, Elena Soto turned inward, finding solace in faith and the unshakable belief that her daughters would return. A devout Catholic, Elena attended Mass daily, lighting candles for Samantha and Olivia and spending hours in prayer. The family's living room became a shrine of sorts. Photographs of the twins at various ages arranged around a central portrait taken just months before they vanished. Most poignant was Elena's evening ritual. Each night at 8:45 p.m., the approximate time the twins should have arrived home, she would set 2 places at the dinner table, complete with plates of food that would remain untouched until morning. She would then sit by the front window, watching the street until midnight or later. My mother never said they were dead, Mateo explained.
Not once in 45 years did those words cross her lips. She would say they were missing or away, but never gone forever. She kept their bedroom exactly as they left it. Clothes in the closet, books on the shelves, beds made with fresh sheets changed weekly. This unwavering hope sustained Elena, but isolated her from much of the community. Well-meaning friends who suggested memorial services or other forms of closure were politely but firmly turned away. Invitations to social events went unanswered. Gradually, Elena's world contracted to the boundaries of her home, where she could maintain the fiction that her daughters might walk through the door at any moment. For Mateo and Sofia Soto, aged 15 and 12 when their sisters disappeared, the aftermath brought a different kind of struggle. Overnight, they lost not only their siblings, but in many ways their parents as well. Dad was physically absent, always searching, Sofia recalled. Mom was emotionally absent, lost in her grief and hope. We had to grow up fast, taking care of ourselves and each other while trying to support our parents. School became a particular challenge. In a small town where everyone knew their story, Mateo and Sofia faced constant reminders of their family tragedy. Some classmates avoided them, unsure what to say. Others asked invasive questions, fueled by rumors and speculation. Mateo responded by withdrawing socially, focusing intensely on academics as an escape. By his senior year, he rarely spoke of his sisters, throwing himself into college applications with single-minded focus. He would eventually leave Ashton County for college in California, returning only for brief visits. Sofia took a different path, becoming her parents' emotional support and the family's public face. She attended the annual candlelight vigils, spoke to reporters on anniversaries, and maintained connections with the volunteer network. After high school, she chose to remain in Crestwood, taking classes at the local community college while living at home. I couldn't leave them, she explained. Someone had to remember that life had to go on, even while we kept searching. The extended Soto family, scattered across Texas and Arizona, provided financial support when possible and made regular visits, especially during holidays. These visits brought temporary relief, but also painful reminders of the family's fractured state. Empty chairs at Thanksgiving dinner, missing faces in Christmas photographs, birthday celebrations for the twins held in absentia year after year. Javier's brother Carlos moved to Crestwood in 1977, partly to help with the ongoing search and partly to provide his brother with the emotional support he desperately needed. Carlos took over the family's mounting medical bills and helped maintain the house when repairs were neglected. Javier would have searched until his dying breath, Carlos said, and Elena would have waited just as long. Their devotion to their daughters was both beautiful and heartbreaking to witness. As the years passed, the Soto family's struggle became a part of Ashton County's collective identity. Their story was told to each new generation. Their unwavering commitment in the face of overwhelming odds earned them a unique place in the community's heart. Even those who believed the twins were long dead respected the family's refusal to surrender hope. If you're finding this story as heartbreaking as I did, make sure you're subscribed to stay updated on more cases like this. These families deserve to have their stories told, and your support helps ensure these victims are never forgotten. Ashton County transformed dramatically in the decades following the Soto twins' disappearance. The sleepy rural community of 1974 gradually gave way to suburban development as Columbus's urban sprawl extended southward. By the 1990s, a new four-lane highway connected Crestwood to the state capital, bringing chain stores, fast food restaurants, and housing developments that forever altered the county's character. Miller's Diner closed in 1986, replaced by a series of businesses, a video rental store, a tanning salon, and eventually a cell phone retailer. Thompson's Pharmacy was absorbed by a national drugstore chain. The Courthouse Square, once the vibrant center of community life, struggled to compete with a shopping mall built on the outskirts of town in 1992.
The Sterling Mining Company ceased operations in 1983 amid falling coal prices and rising safety concerns. The mines that had provided livelihoods for generations of Ashton County residents, including Javier Soto, were sealed and abandoned, slowly reclaimed by nature as vegetation covered the scars left on the landscape. Through these changes, the Soto case remained an unhealed wound in the community's psyche. Each transformation of the physical landscape seemed to erase another potential clue, another connection to that October night in 1974. Every time they tore down an old building or paved over a field, I wondered as we were destroying evidence, said Kevin Fisher, the former deputy who had been among the first responders when the twins were reported missing. The town was moving on, but the case was standing still. The investigation wasn't entirely dormant during these decades. Every 5 years, like clockwork, media attention would resurface around the anniversary of the disappearance. These periodic spotlights typically generated new tips, most proving fruitless, but occasionally substantial enough to warrant renewed investigation. In 1979, the case received its first major review when Sheriff Wallace lost his re-election bid to Richard Cole, a former state trooper who had campaigned on a promise to solve the county's most notorious cold case. Cole assembled a task force that spent 6 months re-examining evidence and re-interviewing witnesses. Their efforts yielded a new person of interest, a former carnival worker with a history of violence against women who had been passing through Ashton County in October 1974. However, the suspect died in a prison fight in Kentucky before investigators could question him. The 1980s brought advances in investigative techniques that prompted another review in 1984. FBI profilers created a psychological assessment of the likely perpetrator, suggesting the twins' disappearance was probably the work of someone familiar with the area, who had specifically targeted the sisters rather than a crime of opportunity. This profile narrowed the focus to local residents with connections to the Soto family or Miller's Diner, but produced no breakthrough. The advent of DNA analysis in criminal investigations sparked hope in 1994 when the Sheriff's Department announced they would re-examine physical evidence using these new techniques. Unfortunately, the limited evidence collected in 1974 had been improperly stored, rendering most samples degraded beyond usefulness. The hair ribbon found near the twins' walking route, long suspected to be unrelated to the case, was confirmed to have no connection to either sister. Cold cases are always challenging, but this one was particularly difficult, explained Detective Sarah Jenkins, who led the 1994 review. We had no crime scene, minimal physical evidence, and witnesses whose memories had been clouded by time and media coverage. We were essentially starting from scratch 20 years after the fact. The new millennium brought fresh eyes to the case when the Ohio Bureau of Investigation established a cold case unit in 2002. The Soto disappearance was among the first files reviewed. Investigators digitized the original case notes, created computer models of possible scenarios, and established a dedicated tip line. For a brief period, it seemed that technological advances might finally break the case open. The most promising lead came in 2008 when construction workers, preparing to build a new subdivision on the outskirts of Crestwood, uncovered what appeared to be human remains. For 3 days, the Soto family waited as forensic anthropologists examined the bones, only to learn they were Native American remains dating back centuries. By the 2010s, the case had taken on an almost mythical quality in Ashton County. Younger residents grew up hearing about the Soto twins without any personal connection to the events. Urban legends sprouted around the disappearance, tales of ghostly twin figures seen walking along Sycamore Street on autumn evenings, or mysterious voices heard near the sealed mine entrances. For the Soto family, however, there was nothing mythical about their continued suffering. Javier's health declined steadily, with multiple heart attacks in 2005 and 2012, leaving him increasingly frail. Elena's unwavering hope never dimmed, though her ritual of setting places at the dinner table eventually reduced to special occasions only. Mateo established a successful engineering career in California, visiting less frequently as the years passed. Only Sophia remained in Crestwood, serving as caretaker for her aging parents while maintaining the family's modest efforts to keep the case alive in public memory. What's the weather like where you are today? The Soto family endured 45 years of changing seasons without answers, through scorching Ohio summers, crisp autumn evenings like the one when the twins vanished, winter holidays marked by empty chairs, and spring days that brought renewal to everything except their hopes for resolution. October 12, 2019. A crisp autumn Saturday, almost identical to the one 45 years earlier when Samantha and Olivia Soto vanished without a trace. Deputy Brian Miller wasn't thinking about the Soto case as he responded to reports of teenagers trespassing at the abandoned Ironwood Mine. At 32, Miller was too young to remember the original disappearance. To him, it was just another local legend, a story told around campfires to frighten children. The Ironwood Mine had been officially closed since 1983, its entrances supposedly sealed with concrete barriers and chain-link fencing. But decades of neglect had allowed nature to reclaim the area, and determined trespassers had found ways to access the labyrinth of tunnels beneath. Local teenagers considered it a rite of passage to venture into the mine's entrance chamber, leaving behind empty beer cans and graffiti as evidence of their exploits. Miller expected another routine call: issue warnings, confiscate alcohol, and send the kids home with a stern lecture about the dangers of abandoned mines. What he found instead would finally break open Ashton County's most notorious cold case. "I noticed something odd about one of the side tunnels," Miller later testified. "There was a barrier that looked newer than the others, not concrete like the main entrance, but a wall of rocks and timber that didn't match the surrounding area. It seemed deliberately constructed, not a natural cave-in." Curious, Miller used his flashlight to examine the barrier more closely. Between the rocks, he spotted what appeared to be fabric, weathered and discolored, but clearly man-made. Calling for backup, Miller carefully removed several stones, revealing what lay hidden behind the makeshift wall: the remains of two individuals, positioned side by side in a small alcove carved into the tunnel wall. Fragments of clothing still clung to the bones, remnants of what forensic analysts would later confirm were identical blue diner uniforms. And there, partially buried in the disturbed soil, a tarnished silver locket with the initials S.O. engraved on its face. "I knew immediately what I'd found," Miller said later. "Everyone who grows up in Ashton County knows about the Soto twins. I'd seen their pictures 100 times in the Historical Society Museum. Finding them was like coming to face with local history." The discovery site was immediately secured as multiple agencies descended on the abandoned mine. The Ashton County Sheriff's Department, the Ohio Bureau of Investigation, and the FBI established a joint task force within hours. The mine entrance became the center of the most significant forensic operation in county history. Recovering the remains proved challenging. The mine's unstable condition required structural engineers to reinforce the tunnels before evidence collection could begin. A team of forensic anthropologists from the University of Ohio supervised the meticulous excavation, documenting the position of every bone, fabric fragment, and potential evidence before anything was moved. The breakthrough that had eluded investigators for nearly half a century had finally arrived. But identifying the remains was only the beginning. The crucial questions remained. Who had hidden the Soto twins in this remote section of the mine, and how had they remained undiscovered for so long? The first piece of the puzzle came from the mine's historical records. The section where the remains were found had been part of an expansion project abandoned in early 1974 due to safety concerns. According to company documents, that particular tunnel had been officially sealed in March 1974, 7 months before the twins disappeared. This explained why searchers hadn't checked the area in 1974. It was presumed inaccessible. Quote, "Someone with knowledge of the mine's layout would have known about this hidden space. They would have known it was sealed off on company maps, but still physically accessible if you knew how to get there." End quote. This revelation immediately narrowed the suspect pool to individuals familiar with Sterling mining operations, former employees, contractors, or others with specialized knowledge of the mine's geography. The forensic examination of the remains yielded the case's next critical breakthrough. Advanced DNA analysis confirmed what the silver locket had already suggested. The remains were indeed those of Samantha and Olivia Soto. But it was the manner of death that provided the most significant clue. Both sisters had suffered similar fractures to the skull, consistent with blunt force trauma. The medical examiner determined these injuries were the likely cause of death, inflicted by a heavy object with a flat striking surface, possibly a hammer or similar tool. More importantly, microscopic analysis of the bone fractures indicated the fatal blows had been delivered from behind, suggesting the twins had been attacked unexpectedly, possibly while walking. Quote, "The positioning of the remains told us something important. They weren't simply dumped in the mine. They were deliberately arranged side by side, almost as if in repose. Their hands appeared to have been placed together. This suggests the perpetrator knew them personally. There was a level of care in how they were positioned that you don't typically see in stranger homicides." End quote. Perhaps the most crucial evidence came from technology that hadn't existed in 1974. Soil samples collected from around the remains contained microscopic fibers and trace elements that modern forensic techniques could analyze with extraordinary precision. Blue cotton fibers matched the twins' Miller Diner uniforms, confirming they had been brought to the mine directly after their disappearance without changing clothes. Pollen analysis indicated an autumn deposition, consistent with their October disappearance. But it was the presence of a specific type of industrial lubricant, one used exclusively by Sterling Mining for their equipment in the 1970s, that provided the most significant lead. This particular lubricant contained a unique chemical signature, as the company had used a proprietary formula. More importantly, access to this lubricant was restricted to specific personnel, primarily maintenance workers and equipment operators. Cross-referencing employment records from 1974 with the list of persons of interest from the original investigation produced a name that had appeared only peripherally in the initial case files: Arthur Bishop. He had worked as a maintenance supervisor at Sterling Mining in 1974, responsible for equipment repairs and tunnel safety inspections. Then 35 years old, he had been interviewed briefly during the original investigation as part of the routine canvassing of mine employees who knew Javier. Nothing in that interview had flagged him as suspicious. He reported being home with his wife the night of the disappearance, an alibi that was never thoroughly verified. What the original investigators didn't know, but modern database searches revealed, was Arthur Bishop's history before arriving in Ashton County. He had been questioned in connection with the disappearance of a young woman in West Virginia in 1969, though never charged. He had also been arrested for assault in Pennsylvania in 1971, but the charges were dropped when the victim refused to testify.
Most damning of all was the discovery that Bishop had been a regular customer at Miller's Diner, often sitting in the section served by the Soto twins. Several former employees, re-interviewed in 2019, recalled that he had shown particular interest in Samantha, asking about her schedule and attempting to engage her in conversation, attention she had politely but firmly rebuffed. The picture that emerged was of a man with a fixation on Samantha Soto, Agent Ross said. When she rejected his advances, that rejection, combined with his history of violence toward women, likely triggered the attack. This breakthrough came after decades of silence. Hit the like button if you believe cold cases deserve more attention. Every case deserves resolution, no matter how much time has passed. Arthur Bishop had lived in plain sight for 45 years. At 80 years old in 2019, he had long since retired from Sterling Mining, spending his later career as a maintenance supervisor at Ashton County High School until 2004.
He lived in the same modest ranch house on Maple Street he'd purchased in 1973, just 6 blocks from where the Soto family had resided. His lawn was always meticulously maintained, his garbage cans brought in promptly after collection, his Christmas lights displayed with geometric precision each December. To his neighbors, Bishop was the quintessential quiet, elderly widower, his wife Eleanor having passed away from cancer in 2001. He attended the First Baptist Church most Sundays, volunteered occasionally at the local food bank, and was known to fix appliances for neighbors free of charge. His only apparent quirk was his intense privacy. He rarely invited anyone into his home and declined most social invitations with polite but firm refusals. He was just part of the background of the town, said Carol Evans, who had lived across the street from Bishop for over 30 years. The kind of neighbor who waves from the driveway but doesn't stop to chat. Nothing about him ever raised any red flags. What no one in Ashton County realized was that Arthur Bishop had been hiding in plain sight, carrying the secret of the Soto twins' fate while participating in the very community their disappearance had traumatized. The arrest came at dawn on October 25, 2019, 13 days after the discovery at Ironwood Mine. A tactical team from the Ohio Bureau of Investigation surrounded Bishop's home while he slept, using a bullhorn to order him outside. Neighbors described their shock at seeing the elderly man emerge in his bathrobe, hands raised, as officers in tactical gear secured him and placed him in an unmarked vehicle. By noon, news of the arrest had spread throughout Ashton County like wildfire. The sheriff's department called a press conference for 3 p.m., but well before the official announcement, social media was ablaze with speculation and disbelief. Many residents initially assumed there must be some mistake. Arthur Bishop seemed too ordinary, too integrated into the community to be responsible for the county's most notorious crime. Sheriff James Wilson, flanked by FBI representatives and the district attorney, confirmed what many found difficult to comprehend. Arthur Bishop had been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Samantha and Olivia Soto. The community's reaction was immediate and visceral. It was like a collective gut punch, described Crestwood Chronicle editor Susan Riley. Everyone had their theories about the Soto case. Drifters passing through, serial killers, even supernatural explanations. No one imagined it could be someone who'd been among us all along, someone who taught our children's Sunday school classes and fixed our lawnmowers. The arrest sparked painful self-examination throughout Ashton County. How had Bishop avoided suspicion for nearly half a century? Why had no one connected the dots? The answers revealed both the limitations of 1970s investigative techniques and the insidious way predators can blend into their communities. In 1974, Arthur Bishop had presented as the ideal alibi witness. His wife Eleanor had confirmed he was home the night of the disappearance, stating they had watched television together until bedtime. Investigators, overwhelmed with leads and lacking resources to verify every alibi, had accepted this statement at face value. What they couldn't know was that Eleanor Bishop, according to evidence discovered in 2019, had been a victim of domestic abuse who lived in fear of her husband. Journals found hidden in the attic of Bishop's home during the 2019 search revealed Eleanor's private torment. In entries spanning decades, she documented her husband's controlling behavior, violent outbursts, and most critically, his unexplained absence on the night of October 17, 1974. She had lied to investigators out of fear, a decision that haunted her until her death. "I carry the weight of my silence," she wrote in a 2000 entry shortly before her cancer diagnosis. "2 young women are gone because I was too afraid to speak. Their mother waits by the window while I live with the monster who took their daughters." Eleanor never found the courage to come forward during her lifetime, but her hidden writings became crucial evidence against her husband after her death. Bishop's employment at Sterling Mining provided both motive and opportunity. As a maintenance supervisor, he had access to all areas of the mine, including the abandoned tunnel where the twins were hidden. His work schedule showed he had conducted a safety inspection of that section of the mine on October 18, 1974, the day after the disappearance, giving him the perfect opportunity to conceal the bodies. Most disturbing was the evidence that Bishop had continued to insert himself into the case over the years. Records showed he had attended multiple candlelight vigils for the Soto twins.
A photograph from the Crestwood Chronicle archives, dated October 1979, showed Bishop standing in the background during the 5-year anniversary memorial service. Former colleagues recalled him discussing the case occasionally, always expressing sympathy for the family, while suggesting the investigation was looking in the wrong direction. He would say things like, "They'll never find those girls looking where they're looking," remembered Bill Peterson, who had worked with Bishop at the high school. "We all thought he was just playing armchair detective like everyone else in town. No one imagined he was practically confessing." The search of Bishop's home yielded the physical evidence needed to secure an indictment. In a locked metal box in his garage, investigators found a silver charm that matched the design of Samantha Soto's locket. DNA analysis confirmed microscopic blood residue on the charm belonged to Samantha. Also in the box was a blue hair ribbon identical to those the twins often wore, this one containing strands of hair that matched Olivia's DNA profile. Most incriminating was a maintenance log from Sterling Mining, apparently stolen from company records, documenting the sealing of the tunnel in March 1974. Bishop had annotated the margins with calculations of depth and accessibility, suggesting he had identified this location as a hiding place months before the actual murders. The forensic evidence, combined with Eleanor's journals and Bishop's documented history of fixation on Samantha Soto, created a compelling case, but it was modern technology applied to old evidence that provided the final, irrefutable link between Bishop and the crime. The blue Ford pickup truck that witnesses had reported seeing near Thompson's pharmacy the night of the disappearance had been sold by Bishop in 1975. Investigators in 2019 managed to track down the vehicle, now owned by a collector of vintage trucks in Kentucky. Although the truck had been repainted and restored multiple times over the decades, forensic technicians using advanced chemical analysis discovered microscopic traces of blood in crevices beneath the passenger seat upholstery frame. Blood that DNA testing confirmed belonged to both Soto twins. This evidence suggested the sisters had been transported in Bishop's truck after being attacked, likely rendered unconscious or already deceased. The blood pattern indicated they had been placed on the passenger side floorboard, explaining why no one had reported seeing them in the vehicle. The arrest of Arthur Bishop forced Ashton County to confront uncomfortable truths about community vigilance and the limitations of human perception. Here was a man who had lived among them for decades, participating in community life while harboring unimaginable secrets. He had watched Javier Soto search tirelessly for his daughters, knowing exactly where they were hidden. He had observed Elena Soto's daily vigil by the window, aware that her wait was in vain. The most terrifying aspect is how ordinary he seemed, noted Dr. Catherine Reed, a criminal psychologist who consulted on the case. We want to believe we can identify dangerous individuals, that they somehow look or act differently. Arthur Bishop reminds us that the most effective predators are those who appear completely unremarkable. For the Soto family, the arrest brought a complex mixture of emotions. Javier Soto, now 87 and in failing health, was wheeled into the courtroom for Bishop's arraignment, locking eyes with his daughter's alleged killer for the first time. Elena, 85, refused to attend, stating through her daughter Sophia that she couldn't bear to be in the same room as the devil who took my girls. Mateo Soto flew in from California, facing for the first time the community he had left decades earlier. In a brief statement to the press, he expressed gratitude to Deputy Miller for his discovery and to the forensic teams for their diligence, but noted, "There is no arrest, no conviction, no punishment that can restore what was taken from us." Justice delayed this long is justice diminished. The community's reaction to Bishop's arrest evolved from initial shock to collective soul-searching. Town hall meetings were organized to discuss how such a crime could go unsolved for so long, with the perpetrator living openly among them. The Ashton County Historical Society established a scholarship in the Soto twins' names, dedicated to supporting students pursuing careers in forensic science and cold case investigation. Perhaps most poignant was the spontaneous memorial that appeared outside Bishop's now empty house. Photographs of Samantha and Olivia, candles, flowers, and handwritten notes of apology from community members who felt they should have somehow known, should have seen something, should have prevented 45 years of injustice. The trial of Arthur Bishop began in March 2020, just as the world was grappling with the onset of a global pandemic. Court proceedings were modified with social distancing measures, but Ashton County officials were determined to move forward without delay. After 45 years of waiting, the Soto family deserved resolution. The prosecution presented a methodical case, building a timeline that connected Bishop to the twins' disappearance through both physical evidence and witness testimony. Former Miller Diner employees testified about Bishop's frequent visits and his particular interest in Samantha. Forensic experts explained how modern technology had revealed evidence overlooked in 1974. The defense, recognizing the overwhelming evidence, focused primarily on Bishop's age and health, arguing that prison would be unnecessarily cruel for an 80-year-old man. Bishop himself remained stoic throughout the proceedings, showing no visible emotion even when confronted with the most damning evidence. He declined to testify in his own defense and offered no statement when given the opportunity before sentencing. After just 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with unanimous guilty verdicts on both counts of first-degree murder. Judge Rebecca Shaw sentenced Bishop to 2 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. Noting that while his advanced age meant he would likely die in prison regardless, the consecutive sentences symbolically acknowledged the separate value of each young life he had taken. No passage of time diminishes the gravity of this crime, Judge Shaw stated during sentencing. 2 promising lives were cut short. A family was shattered. A community lost its sense of security. Justice may have been delayed, but it will not be denied. For the Soto family, the conviction brought closure, but not comfort. Javier Soto, who had dedicated his life to finding his daughters, lived just long enough to see their killer brought to justice. He passed away peacefully in his sleep 2 weeks after the sentencing, having fulfilled his promise to Samantha and Olivia. Elena, upon hearing the verdict, finally allowed her daughter's bedroom to be packed up. The clothes they would never wear again, the books they would never finish reading, the dreams they would never fulfill, all carefully preserved for 45 years, were donated to a women's shelter in Crestwood. Elena kept only a few treasured photographs and Olivia's guitar, which now hangs on the wall of the living room where she still sits each evening, no longer waiting, but remembering. Mateo and Sofia Soto established a foundation in their sisters' names, dedicated to supporting cold case investigations across Ohio. The foundation provides grants for advanced forensic testing and specialized training for rural law enforcement agencies, ensuring that other families might find answers sooner than they did. The Soto case has become a template for cold case investigations nationwide. Law enforcement agencies have studied how modern technology applied to preserved evidence can solve decades-old crimes. The case is now included in FBI training materials, highlighting both the investigative failures of 1974 and the persistent determination that eventually brought resolution. In Ashton County, the case has transformed community awareness. A volunteer citizens group now works with local police to maintain a database of unsolved crimes and missing persons cases. Annual training sessions teach residents how to be more observant and engaged neighbors. The high school curriculum includes a unit on community safety and the importance of reporting suspicious behavior
regardless of who was involved. Arthur Bishop died in prison in January 2022, taking to his grave the full truth of what happened that night in 1974. He never expressed remorse, never offered an explanation, never provided the Soto family with the answers to their lingering questions. Yet even in his silence, justice was served.